70 years ago today, October 6th, 1943, a group of rabbis and Jewish war veterans staged a small march in Washington to draw public attention to the Holocaust then taking place across Nazi-occupied Europe. We are still learning more about just what happened, both from archives and from the personal witness of those who somehow survived. Our cover story is reported now by Lee Cowan.
Here's the train arrives, people getting out, lining up on the platform, and pretty soon they will be told men to one side and women to the other.
And you remember this vividly?
Of course, exactly.
To talk with Irene Weiss is to touch the Holocaust in a truly personal way.
This is the road to the gas chambers.
She's a survivor, and yet some 7 decades later, she can barely believe that it actually happened.
At first, this was pretty hard to talk about, wasn't it?
Yes, it was extremely difficult. But gradually, I realized that we have to share this story. We can't let people forget it.
She was just 13 when the boxcar carrying her and her family arrived at Auschwitz on that all-too-busy platform.
So what happened when those doors on the cattle car opened?
Well, there was always barking orders to get out, and my father and 16-year-old brother lined up with the other men and boys, and the women and children and elderly in another line.
Where did your mom go?
Well, she and a very large number of the people from the train were headed right to the gas chambers. Within a half hour, they were all dead. Into my head.
That was her childhood reality. But the older she grew, the more unimaginable it all seemed. Until one day, when she heard about a set of photos that she never knew existed.
I remember getting out of the train, that very traumatic thing. And
that very moment is...
That very moment, yeah.
They were taken by the Nazis on that Auschwitz platform on the very day Irene arrived.
I am here, right here. But I'm leaning in to see where my little sister went. We were assigned to barracks, and we met people who had come before us, and the very first thing we asked is, when are we going to see our families? And they pointed to the chimney, and they said, you know, that's where your parents are, that's where your family is. And we
pointed to the chimney.
In the chimney, and we ignored it totally. It cannot be.
And then there's this photo that captured Irene's family, waiting in line for the Auschwitz gas chamber.
These two little boys are my two little brothers, and for a long time I could not find my mother here, and I was very unhappy. And then one day, this little face here sticking out, and when I looked with a magnifying glass, I found her. Yeah, that's the one.
That's your mom right there?
Right in there.
The Holocaust, it seems, continues even now to reveal its horrific reality, and not just to survivors like Irene Weiss. At the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., a 13-year project has uncovered evidence that the number of places where the Holocaust was put into practice is actually far more numerous than anyone imagined.
So when you started this, what was your sense of the scope?
I mean, I thought that 5,000 or 7,000 sites was an astounding number.
And what did it end up being?
Right now, we're at 42,500.
That's like 6 times what you thought, right?
Exactly. When you put them all together, this was a shock. This is the first volume of the encyclopedia.
Jeffrey McGargy is the lead editor of a multi-volume encyclopedia being written on the Holocaust. His research doesn't change the number of people exterminated. What it does is enumerate the mind-boggling number of concentration camps, killing centers, ghettos, brothels, and forced labor camps, where the Nazis not only persecuted Jews, but Poles, homosexuals, Soviet prisoners of war, and many others, too.
So what does that say about the notion that this was just taking place in a few corners of Europe and was the result of Hitler and a few madmen?
I think it destroys it utterly. Really, to say that you didn't know that there were camps or what was going on in the camps that were local, that would have been impossible.
Which raises the question just who beyond the notorious SS, was complicit in the persecution. For most of the last 70-plus years, German women, for example, were thought to be largely innocent bystanders. But disturbing new research, to be released in a book this week, paints an unnerving portrait of women's participation in the Holocaust. They, too, could be brutal killers.
It takes a certain cognitive ability to carry out these, to organize this kind of mass murder on this scale. And, you know, women are not innocent of that. They have that cognitive ability.
Author Wendy Lauer says a generation of women was swept up in the nationalistic fervor of the Nazi movement. Banners, like this one, reading, "Women and girls, the Jews are your ruin," were pervasive. She points to 23-year-old Erna Petri, who stumbled on 6 Jewish children who had escaped from a nearby train. She was so anxious to prove her loyalty to the Reich that she shot them all in the back of the head. There was Johanna Altvater, who at 22 had moved east to be a secretary. One day, while on a visit to a Jewish ghetto, one inquisitive child got too close.
She picked the child up by the legs and slammed it against the ghetto wall, like she was, you know, kind of shaking the dust out of a carpet.
These women weren't military. They weren't under orders to kill. Lauer points out, it's just what they knew.
They did it willingly. They weren't just conforming. They weren't just getting along. They were ideologically hooked.
I was very enthusiastic. There was no time I doubted anything. Yeah.
You were proud to be a Nazi.
Yeah, and I was really proud. Yeah, oh yes.
Ursula Mallendorf knows about getting ideologically hooked. She was a member of the Hitler Youth at the tender age of 10. She was forced to join.
Everything the nation did was all right. Everything that Hitler did was all right. And if bad things were done by the party, Hitler didn't know about it.
She later became a nurse's aide at a field hospital. One day, an injured Russian POW was brought in. She had been taught to hate anything not purely German. 2 orderlies asked her if they should kill him instead of treat him. And what happened next surprised her.
I've never felt a wave of hatred like that before. And I was just about to yell, "Yes, you do it."
Kill him.
Yeah. And I was aware of what it was, of what I would have been saying. That was one realization that always stayed with me. I could have killed.
She didn't. As far as she knows, that POW survived. Ursula eventually moved to the U.S. as a Fulbright scholar and spent her life teaching at the University of California at Santa Barbara. But her Nazi past still haunts her to this day.
Have you forgiven yourself?
That's a hard one. Yeah. In part. I've got to live with myself.
She now counts among her friends Holocaust survivors who bear a different kind of witness. The extent of the Nazi brutality may only be coming to light to researchers now, but for Irene Weiss, it was always there.
This may be an odd question, but I mean, do you ever wonder why you survived?
Pure chance in every way.
Just luck?
Like, there were so many chances to die and so many occasionally chances to survive another day. The system was rigged against survival.